My name is Stacy White. I am 30 years old. After dating Patrick for 2 years, I accepted his proposal, and we planned to visit his parents' house to announce our engagement. Little did I know that such a marriage proposal would lead to such an ending. What should I do? I'm getting nervous. Don't worry, it'll be okay. How can you say that? Who wouldn't be nervous in front of such a huge mansion? His parents are wealthy landowners. I heard that his grandfather was given land by a landlord from which he started a company. Both my mom and dad were looking forward to meeting you, Stacy. But just in case they say anything, I'll always protect you. Patrick. Trusting his words, I visited the mansion. However, those words were quickly betrayed. It seems you and our son are not a good match after all. We don't accept a marriage with a poor woman from a single mother's home. Get out, you gold digger. Poor Patrick. He's been deceived by this woman. We have to stop him, or he'll end up marrying a thieving cat. Let's pretend the engagement never happened. I guess you're right. Stacy, it looks like we should call off the engagement. As soon as they learned I was raised by a single mother, his parents attacked me. Patrick, who said he would protect me, sided with his parents and betrayed me. Indeed, I lost my father early on and was raised by my mother. Just because we were a single mother family doesn't mean we deserve to be despised. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying we don't match. Single-parent kids should marry other single-parent kids, and poor people should marry other poor people. You're just trying to hit the jackpot by marrying a rich son. How can you say that? Are you denying it? You knew my son was the heir to a wealthy family, right? That's true, but... And yet you accepted his proposal without hesitation. If I were you, I'd be too ashamed to even consider marriage. Did you deceive my son to inherit his father's company and this land? Stacy, you planned all this. How could you believe that? Do you really trust what they're saying? I don't want to believe it, but if Mom says so, it must be true, right? I chose Stacy, thinking she would be good for our family. I can't believe you approached me with such intentions. I've drawn a short straw. What are you saying? If she's a lawyer, that's even worse. She might have used her skills to investigate our family, to see how much she could gain by marrying into this house. No, that's scary. I'm really not a thieving cat. Let me tell you, our family's wealth isn't something you can easily take. This land was given to my father by the wealthiest landlord in this region when I was still in my mother's womb. My father was cheated by a friend and lost everything. At that time, that landlord allowed him to use this land for free. Free? Yes, that's right. My father passed away a few years ago, and I don't know the details, but he started a company and became wealthy. We've built this wealth through hard work, and I won't easily hand it over to a newcomer like you. Sorry, but my son may have been deceived, but I am not. Get out of this house immediately. I'm sorry to turn you away right after you arrived. Surely there are plenty of suitable people out there for you. Please give up on my son gracefully. But to be 30 and still not married, you might not be able to marry at all. If you had engaged someone similar from the start, you might have been happy by now. That's what you get for aiming too high. That's sad to say, but, well, it's true. Sorry, Stacy. That's the way it is. His parents insulted me, and even he mocked me. However, they didn't know the other reason I had come here. Is that so? Then I'll leave. But are you sure? Of course I am. Just get out. There's nothing more to talk about. Understood. Then please vacate this place immediately. Their faces turned blank for a moment, but then they laughed scornfully. I wondered what you were going to say. What do you mean, please vacate? You must have gone mad from the shock. Just because you're a little upset about family matters, you don't have to make such a tasteless joke. Is this your last struggle? There's no reason for someone with no authority like you to tell us to do such a thing. Just get out. Yes, I am the landlord. That's why I'm telling you to vacate this place. Stacy, what are you talking about? You're the landlord? That's ridiculous. It's true. Well, it wasn't me who gave the land to your grandfather, but my grandfather. Indeed, the landlord who gave the land mentioned by his father was my grandfather. Decades ago, when his grandfather was swindled and lost everything at the same age, my grandfather offered this land. Don't lie. There's no way such a coincidence could happen. I think so too, but this is the truth. Then I presented them with a document. What is this? This is the deed for the land this house is built on. You said it was given by the landlord, but that's not true. Mr. Patrick's grandfather was only borrowing it temporarily and conditionally from my grandfather. What are you talking about? If you really received the land from the landlord, various taxes such as inheritance tax would arise. But it seems you haven't paid any taxes, have you? And if you had paid taxes and received this land, it would be strange that I hold the title deed. Why do I have the title deed? Because I am the landlord's granddaughter, and the land rights were transferred to me. Moreover, the land was not given but lent. They believed they had been granted the land for free by the landlord, but in reality, they were merely renting it. How can that be? What does temporarily and conditionally mean? It seems that Mr. Patrick's grandfather and my grandfather were friends. Seeing him in trouble, my grandfather initially offered to give him the land for free, but Mr. Patrick's grandfather refused to accept the land for free from someone else. So my grandfather set conditions. The conditions were to lend it for free until he could stand on his own feet, and then, once he felt stable, to start paying for the use of the land. No, that's a lie. Such a story. I thought you would say that, so I brought the payment details that have been made up to now. The statement I presented was proof that his grandfather had indeed kept his promise. Have you understood now? However, his father still seemed unable to accept the truth, clutching his head and saying, "But there have been no bills until now. I haven't paid anything, and I've never heard of such a story. If it were true, by now, we would have received countless bills and dunning letters. Since none have arrived, the landlord must have given this land to my father for free. What do you mean by the landlord's granddaughter? All lies. You have no right to tell us to vacate." His father shouted at me in anger. However, I wasn't just making baseless claims. Really? Are you sure no invoices or dunning letters have arrived? How many times do I have to tell you that nothing has come? Are you mistaken? We haven't received any bills at all. Absolutely not. Next to him, one person had a pale face and was looking down. That was Patrick's mother. What's wrong? You've looked pale for a while. Ah, no, it's nothing. Do you have any idea what might be going on? No, that's not. Maybe. You know about the invoices arriving? No, that can't be. If my husband says they haven't arrived, then they really haven't. Is that so? But we have records. We have records of sending land use bills and dunning letters to your house. So they must have arrived. If you know something, can you please start telling the truth? Seemingly unable to keep silent any longer, she sighed heavily and began to speak quietly. They arrived. What did you just say? They arrived. Yes, they did. Not just one or two, but many. Why didn't you tell me this? Did you know about this? Yes, I knew. I knew that this land wasn't given for free, but was under a contract with a time limit. Since when? When the first invoice arrived. It was written in the documents. Until then, I didn't know. I thought, just as your father said, that the landlord had given it to us for free, so I never questioned it, nor did I ask you or your father. And when I saw the amount on the invoice, I was shocked. We're wealthy, but it wasn't an amount we could just casually pay. So I thought I'd keep quiet about it. You thought you'd keep quiet? Well, what could I do? Patrick will inherit this land next. The backlogged use fees that haven't been paid up to now are your responsibility, so you should pay them. But once Patrick inherits this land, he will have to start paying these land use fees. I couldn't bear the thought of him having to pay such amounts. But still, why didn't you know about this? Didn't your father tell you anything? He didn't tell me anything. I wonder about that. You always half listen to people and don't remember important things. Maybe you did hear it but forgot? That can't be. Your wife is right about that. When Mr. Patrick's grandfather was passing, he told my grandfather, I've informed my son about the contract. Please take care of the rest. That's absurd. I heard nothing. My father was delirious at the end, so he might think he said it, but actually, your father thought you would say that, so he left the documents with me. From my father? Saying that, I presented a document. That's right, at the hospital. The document was about changing the landholder. Additionally, it was a signed document stating he had clearly heard about the land contract. Perhaps because of his habit of not listening properly, he argued whether it was said or not, so documents were left to ensure clarity. I remember signing this document, but what my father said at that time, I don't remember. He just said to take care of the family. You see, your father told you about it. How can you forget such a thing? You really didn't listen to anything. It's so frustrating. What? Basically, if you had told me about the invoice when it arrived, it wouldn't have turned into such a big deal. Blaming me while excusing yourself. That's totally unreasonable. What did you say? As the couple began arguing vehemently, ignoring everything else, I intervened. I apologize for interrupting your argument, But please pay the full amount owed up to now and vacate this place as soon as possible. But being told to vacate so suddenly. It's not sudden. As I mentioned earlier, we have sent you invoices and dunning letters several times, but you ignored them. It should have been written there. If there is no payment or contact by the deadline, we kindly request you to vacate promptly. But, faced with his desperate parents, Patrick was staring at me as if he wanted to say something. What? If you want to say something, just say it. How did you know? Know what? All I told Stacy was that my grandfather had received land from a landlord long ago. How did you know all this? When Patrick told me that story, I didn't even know that my grandfather was the landlord. But a few months ago, when my mother fell ill, she started talking about the land. When my grandfather passed away, my mother inherited his vast lands. However, she was juggling several jobs to raise me, so she had no time to care for the land. It seems she had completely forgotten about it until she fell ill. Before becoming immobile, she transferred the land to me. Then I researched the long-neglected land and discovered there was a parcel leased out on a temporary basis. But that lease had expired long ago. Moreover, since the leaseholder changed, no payments had been made. Once I learned this, I immediately sent out invoices. That was around the time I heard the story from Patrick. Initially, I was surprised. What a coincidence. I thought if Patrick's family paid the overdue amount, that would be enough, considering we were going to be family. But before we could discuss this, you excessively insulted me for being from a single mother's home and poor, and even Patrick mocked me. Seeing that, I lost all desire to continue. Hearing this, their faces turned pale, and they looked at each other, clearly confused. What should we do now? There's only one choice. Make the payment and vacate this house. That's all. I'm sorry. Excuse me? I'm sorry for insulting you about being from a single mother's home. I had no idea you were the granddaughter of the landlord. I spoke rudely. I hope you can forgive me. Forgive? What do you mean by that? So, I'll accept your marriage with my son. Just please overlook this instance. So you mean you want to stay here without making any payments? Yes. The land was lent to us by your grandfather out of kindness. But this house, built on that land, was built diligently by my father for us. We can't just give up this house. So please, I'm begging you. His father said this as he begged me. Stacy, I also ask for your forgiveness. What I said earlier wasn't truly how I feel. I was just scared my son was being taken away by you. That's why I acted meanly, right? Let's both let bygones be bygones and get along? The two pleaded, trying to smooth things over. To them, I replied, it's fine if you don't acknowledge the marriage or forgive anything. Just pay the overdue amount and vacate. I won't accept anything less. Did you hear what I just said? This house is important to us, built by my father. Are you telling us to give it up just because it's built on your land? Yes, please give up on the houses. That's just too tyrannical. The house has nothing to do with the land. I'm not saying vacate for free. I will pay you a sum that includes the cost to demolish this house. Use part of it to demolish the house. Pack your belongings and leave." Their expressions changed immediately. If money was involved, they seemed calmer. However, they didn't understand the implications. "However, you'll have to return that evacuation payment." "What? Why?" "As I've said numerous times, no land use fees have been paid since the leaseholder changed, despite sending invoices. Pay the overdue land use fees. It turns out the fees you owe me will exceed the evacuation payment I'm providing you. That's what it means." "What? Are you joking? Asking for a return of what you give?" "Of course. That's the contract. And wouldn't it be better to save any money you can?" "What do you mean by that?" "As I mentioned earlier, since I'm a lawyer, you thought I might be investigating your affairs, and you were right. The non-payment triggered a more detailed investigation. I looked into your company." "My company? What's the matter? You've turned pale. Do you recall something? What are you talking about? I don't know anything." "Then let me be clear. You, as the president, have been embezzling money from your company. And that's not all. There's tax evasion, too. You've been up to no good, haven't you?" "Indeed, while investigating the land, I also looked into his father's company. It was revealed that the president, his father, had been embezzling company funds and engaging in various forms of tax evasion." "Dad, is that true? Embezzlement and tax evasion?" "No, it's not true. I didn't do that. Why would I need to do such things? I'm a wealthy businessman. Why would I embezzle? Hasn't the family fortune already run out?" "What are you talking about?" "You were quite addicted to gambling when you were younger, weren't you? You stopped when Patrick was born and growing up, but once he started working, your old habits resurfaced. I heard you've been dabbling in all sorts of gambling again. Gambling is addictive, isn't it? You should have stopped while you were ahead, but you kept losing, thinking maybe you'd win next time. Before you knew it, you'd spent all the money in the houses. Then came the embezzlement, the tax evasion. Didn't your wife know that you were addicted to gambling?" "Yes, I knew. He was into slots and poker, all sorts of gambling even when we were dating. But we managed because his father was around. His father took care of things so we could get by. Then our son was born, and I asked him to get serious, and he finally stopped gambling. I was relieved, but I never imagined he'd start gambling again, even to the point of embezzling company money." "You didn't know he was embezzling?" "I truly didn't know. I was in charge of the household finances, but the money in the bank account didn't fluctuate much. That must have been because he was replenishing what he spent by embezzling. Why would he do such a thing? Why?" As she covered her face with her hands, she began to sob. From the way her husband was flustered, it seemed she really hadn't known. "I plan to report the embezzlement and tax evasion to the police with the evidence I have. That doesn't mean I'm withdrawing the claim. You need to take full responsibility for what you've done and what you haven't done." "Police?" "Yes. Embezzlement and tax evasion are serious crimes." "Wait a minute. Aren't we about to become family? If you do that, Become family? What are you talking about? But my dad just said he accepted the marriage, right? So, I no longer intend to marry Patrick. Why? Are you seriously asking that? Yes, I am. We came here to get your blessing for our marriage, right? Why wouldn't you marry me? Is it because my parents insulted you, or because my dad was embezzling, or because we thought the land was free and didn't pay the fees? Those are part of the reasons, but mainly it's because of Patrick himself. Me? When both of your parents were insulting me for being from a single mother's home and poor, did you ever step in? Did you ever deny what they said? That is, exactly. Far from denying it, you joined them in mocking me. I can't forgive you for betraying me. So, like your mother said, it's better if we call off the engagement. That's... Dad, Mom, say something. If this goes on, He looked to his parents for words of support, but they were too preoccupied with the land and the embezzlement. They didn't respond and just stared at the ground, disheartened. Well, that's how it is. Thank you for everything up to now, Patrick. As for the claim, I'll notify you later. Please make sure to respond properly this time. After that, I left their grand mansion alone. A few hours later, hello. The intercom at my house rang, and when I checked, Patrick, why are you here? He had come to my home, frantic. Stacy, I need to talk to you. He must have come directly here after I blocked all his contact details. What's there to talk about? I have nothing to discuss with you. Didn't I say? We're calling off the engagement. Don't say that. I want to talk it over again. Just the two of us. Seeing his earnest gaze, I thought to give him one more chance and let him into my house. As soon as he entered, he apologized. I'm truly sorry. I really got carried away. Our family is wealthy, and I thought whatever I said would be forgiven, and that's how I treated you. Plus, ever since I was a kid, my parents told me never to apologize to anyone beneath me. If you show weakness, you'll be disrespected. So I've always lived thinking I'm above everyone. I really think I was the worst. You don't have to forgive me, but I want to marry you. Please, let's start over from that proposal visit. Hearing his plea, I deeply regretted thinking of giving him a chance. His apology wasn't out of consideration for me. It was to try and salvage his own situation without hiding his motives. I told him clearly, why would I restart anything? You think you can say anything because you're the heir to a wealthy family? That you shouldn't apologize to anyone beneath you? You think I would marry someone who talks like that? But no. You promised to protect me, to be okay. But look what happened. Betrayed twice so easily, I can't trust you anymore. Once trust is broken in a marriage, it's over. And for us, it was never really there. I have no intention of starting over with you, so please leave. But if you keep pestering me, I'll have to call the police. When I mentioned the police, he reluctantly left. Though he seemed to have given up, the situation wasn't that simple. I didn't know about such a contract. I will not comply with any payments. Despite my words, they didn't back down, and eventually, it escalated to court. However, why? We've been living here without any problems. Suddenly you demand full payment and to vacate. It's too much. It's tyrannical. The judge's decision was to order them to pay as I had demanded. All three were nearly hysterical. They requested a retrial, but it was denied. They ended up having to pay in installments, and with evidence, the police were notified about the company. I don't know much about what happened afterwards because I wasn't involved. That's ridiculous. If my Father in heaven knew we were bankrupt. Due to his father's embezzlement, the company went bankrupt. All that was left for them was a massive debt, their own doing. I heard that they were on the verge of a family breakdown, blaming each other. Please handle that over there. This is over here. Afterwards, I utilized the land they had to relinquish by building a large apartment complex on it, which now serves as a dormitory for students from nearby high schools and universities. As for me, a few years later, I met a wonderful man and got married, living happily in a way I could never have imagined after such an ordeal.